holiday gift giving doesn't have to be stressful. With these awesome tips, you can eliminate stress and give some handmade gifts with confidence this holiday season. Hey there, Fiber Junkies! Welcome back to the Color Cauldron. I'm Johanna, the owner and dyer behind Potion Yarns and host of this podcast. Last week we talked about 10 reasons why you should give handmade gifts this holiday season. And today we're going to talk about 10 tips to help eliminate stress and make your gift giving a lot smoother. Now this is specifically aimed for knit and crochet artists. However, it can be applied with a few tweaks here and there to pretty much anything that you can make by hand. So don't feel like you can't watch it if you're a painter, sculptor, baker, etc. You just may have to tweak a few of the tips to fit your particular craft a little bit more specifically. However, this should help anyone who makes anything wearable or particularly any knit or crochet artists out there. So what are my tips for seamless, stress-free holiday gift giving? The very first thing that I can tell you is start early and plan ahead. We talked about this a little bit last week in the 10 tips of why you should do this, and one of the reasons why you should do this is because it teaches you how to plan ahead, how to start early, how to think ahead of time about what you're going to be giving people and get started on it so you have plenty of time to finish it up. So that is one of our tips today, is that you really need to do that. Not kidding. One of the biggest complaints I hear from crafters when they are wanting to give handmade for the holidays, whether it's Christmas, a birthday, Mother's Day, whatever, is that they often don't think about it until the last minute, and then they're like, oh crap, I was going to make my mom something for Mother's Day, and they try to cast on a pair of gloves really fast, and then they're stressed, and then it doesn't work out well, or what if they don't have the needle that they need, or what if they don't have any yarn in a color she likes? The list goes on and on. And procrastination is a real thing that we all do, y'all. It happens, especially when life gets busy. And life gets crazy busy around the holidays, especially around Christmas and New Year's. It is insane the last couple months of the year. So if your household is anything like mine, you need to start early, because the last part of the year you are so busy trying to get to all the family gatherings, the parties, the hangouts with friends. You're trying to get the rest of the gifts finished up, purchased, wrapped, etc. You're decorating for the holidays. Maybe you're hosting and you're cooking a lot, or you're baking a lot. There's so much going on, so you need to start well in advance. My tips for holiday knitting will be largely dependent on the second point that I'm going to make here in a minute, but depending on how many gifts you're knitting and what you're knitting, like how large of a project it is and how fast of a knitter you are probably going to want to start at least in October, November for gifts in December, but that's really cutting it awfully dang close. I really recommend earlier is always better, so I tell people I usually start between July and September. When I'm really, really good, which the last 2 years in a row I've been really, really good, and I have managed to start as early as April with my holiday knitting for December. That has worked a lot better for me, because then I can finish up 1 or 2 projects ahead of time and just store those in a box or a tote somewhere, and then pull them out when it comes time to wrap gifts, and I can just keep working, going down my list. Again, this is going to depend a lot on point number 2. And point number 2, our tip number 2, is make sure that you make a list. Figure out ahead of time, like well ahead of time, how many people on your list you could realistically give a gift to. Now, if you are watching this in September when this video comes out, you are going to have several months still, so you could probably get several people on your list knit for. But unless you only give to like 3 or 4 people at the holiday season, which might be you. If that's you, great, you can knit for everyone on your list. But for those of us that have larger lists of people to give gifts to at the holiday season, we probably won't be able to get everyone done between September and December. It's just not practical, even if we're super fast knitter and we don't work and all we do is sit around and knit all day, which how many of us live that fantasy life? Definitely not me. So even if that is the case, you're still going to have trouble getting everyone done. So the earlier you start planning, back to point 1, the more people you can add onto that list, and the more leisure time you have to build in there, the more time you can think about planning which projects you want to do. And while you're making that list, make sure you also start planning what you are going to knit for them. Think about realistically. I know that I do this personally, and I've talked to so many other crafters who do this. We have a tendency to be a little bit over enthusiastic about what we can get done. So this is really a time to be realistic and actually think about how much time it takes you to knit something. Tip number 3, make sure that when you are doing your planning and you're making your list and you're setting your schedule and being realistic about your time frames, make sure that you include in that time frame any additional time for wrapping gifts and or delivery, whether you're sending it in the mail or you're just taking it over to somebody's house. When are you going to see this person? And so try to figure out when you're going to actually see people, when you're going to be able to deliver the gift. If you're sending it in the mail, you have to factor in mail time. And also wrapping time is really important. I tend to underestimate how long it takes me to wrap gifts. And if it's just 1 or 2, it's not a big deal. But when I have a whole mountain of gifts for our family, that can take a while. Tip number 4, don't try to make gifts for everybody on your list. It's just not realistic. For one thing, even if you are super fast knitter and you start December 26th for next Christmas, you are not going to want to only knit Christmas gifts all year long. So unless you are one of those people who only has 3 or 4 people to give at the holidays, some people don't give gifts with their families or their friends. Some people have really small circles. Some people don't give gifts at all. If that is you, that's fine. You might be able to make for everyone on your list if your list is 4 people long. But for those of us that have larger lists, really do not feel the pressure to knit something for everybody on your list or create a handmade item for everyone on your list. Chances are most people aren't going to care if, Aunt Patty got a hand knit shawl and they got the bottle of rum that they really love. Most people don't really care. As long as you're doing something thoughtful and you're making something nice for them, you don't have to knit something for everyone on the list. What I like to do is rotate people. So one year I might make hand knit socks for several of the guys in our family. And then maybe those 4 or 5 guys the next year, they'll get something store-bought and I'll make shawls for a couple of the gals in our family. And then, maybe I don't get to everybody in the family that year, so I make 3 or 4 shawls. And then the next year, I'll make a pair of socks for Uncle Bob, who still hasn't gotten his from a couple years ago. And then, my dad will get, a hand knit hat or something like that. I just like to rotate it around so it's not every year my sister-in-law gets a pair of hand knit socks. Once in a while she does, but she doesn't get it every year. And then that gives variety. It's more fun for her. It makes it a little more special. And then that way, if you do give somebody a hand knit gift and they're like, oh, thanks. Because unfortunately, not everyone is gift worthy. And sometimes we don't know that until after we give them a hand knit gift and they don't really appreciate it. And we're like, okay, you don't get another one. Then you don't have to worry about that, and they probably will be happier not receiving one anyways. But the main thing to remember is that you need to be realistic about your time frames and what you can get done, and make sure that you are not burning yourself out. This is my biggest problem with me personally, is I plan early in the year to give all these handmade gifts to people, and I start working on them and I'm so fired up, and then a couple months in, I'm like, I am so sick of knitting these stupid gifts. This is the time when I just want to order 20 different colors of yarn and cast on an intricate Fair Isle sweater for myself. And if I'm really having to stick to that list, it can get really, really stressful and it can cause burnout. So make sure that you take into account your own personal tendencies. I know some people who literally can knit gifts for everyone on their list, and their list is longer than mine. And that's awesome, but I get burned out. I can't do that. So I like to rotate. I like to keep it manageable and small, and then just purchase gifts or do other handmade gifts like baked goods or handmade body products or something like that in the meantime. So make sure that you are realistic about your list. Tip number 5, accessories are usually quicker, easier, and cheaper to give as gifts. I am never going to discourage somebody from giving a handmade sweater because I love knitting garments, and I think that when you get a well-fit, beautifully made hand knit sweater, there is something incredibly special about that, and it is way better than an accessory in my opinion. However, there are so many variables that go into a sweater that can make it not always land well. So if you're at all nervous about it, if you're at all a beginner or new to it, I would steer you towards accessories. And even if you're an old pro and you're not that nervous about it, I would still steer you towards accessories. Again, not going to say you can't make a sweater. Sometimes it's great and appropriate. I'm actually planning a garment. I hate to use the term sweater because it's more of like a top, but I'm planning a hand knit garment for someone on my list this year, and I think it's going to be great. But most of the time I'm more comfortable giving accessories. There are several reasons. First of all, it's cheaper. When you're on a budget and you have a lot of people to purchase for or purchase yarn for, accessories tend to take less yarn than a full garment, especially for adults on our list. Baby garments take very little yarn, but adults can take quite a bit, especially really tall guys and really muscular men and things like that. So if you have a lot of big people in your family, that can get very expensive. But even small adults, it's amazing how much yarn a sweater will take for a very petite woman. So it can really, really be cheaper for you to just invest in one skein, maybe two, for an accessory. And some accessories, like hats, you can often get 2 or 3 out of one skein of yarn. And then you've knocked off 3 people on your list with one skein. That's really economical. So I really like it for that reason. I also like it because accessories tend to be a little bit quicker than sweaters. They tend to have less finishing involved, less intricate, having to get everything right. So it's easier to make them look professional and do them quickly. And then my third reason, and one of the biggest reasons why I tend to steer towards accessories, is most accessories do not require a super exact size. Socks are one of the exceptions. However, even with that, they can be less exact than a sweater and still work out. But you do have to know the general shoe size, and it's helpful if you get actual measurements of their foot or of socks they wear that they like and are comfortable in, because socks really need to stay up and fit well. A hand knit pair of socks that does not fit well is a major disappointment, but when you get really nice fitting ones, it's like a major wow moment for your giftee. So definitely consider accessories, because things like shawls, scarves, even hats need only very general sizing. One size fits most. You basically just have to know, are they a baby, a toddler, a smaller petite person, or a larger person, a larger adult. That's basically all you have to know. And even within that, my husband and I, our heads are not even close to the same size, and we share hats that I've hand knit all the time, because he'll wear them more like a tight beanie and I'll wear it like a slouchy little hat. So hats are very, very forgiving and one of my personal favorite gifts. But accessories tend to need less sizing and less being precise in your finishing, your sizing, everything else. Tip number 6, while we're speaking about sizing, get sizes ahead of time and check often while you're knitting. This can be really hard with gifts, especially if you're like me and you really enjoy making things a surprise. I personally love surprises, both giving them and getting them. I think surprise is like half of the excitement of getting a gift, right? I don't want to know what you got me for my birthday. I want to be surprised. I really love surprise parties. I really love to surprise other people. I get very frustrated if my husband guesses correctly what his gift is. Now, my husband does not care about surprises nearly as much. He appreciates the thought that goes into me trying to surprise, and he sees how much joy I get out of it, and so he does enjoy it to some extent, but he's the kind of person where he doesn't actually enjoy surprises that much. He actually kind of prefers to have a little more say in things. He really enjoys guessing his gift ahead of time, and he gets really excited if he guesses correctly and I let him know that he's right. That's I feel like a big failure, and he's like, oh, I guessed it. It's so funny how we're all so different. But if you're like me and you like to give surprises, this part may be hard for you. However, I can tell you, as someone who has done this, it is the worst feeling in the world when you spend a lot of money on some nice yarn, you spent months planning, picking out patterns, knitting, blocking, sewing in ends, finishing all of the things that you do, and you wrap up this gift that you're so proud of, and then it doesn't fit the recipient. It's like the worst feeling in the world, and it's happened to me on more than one occasion, and I have literally cried on more than one occasion bitterly and been so humiliated as well as disappointed in myself that it's just not worth it to me now. So I would rather know that it's going to fit, even if that means that I have to tell my husband, hey, I'm knitting you a sweater for Christmas, I need to get your measurements. Now, there are some things you can do to keep it a surprise. One of the things you can do is, if it's somebody who has a spouse, partner, or someone close to them that they live with who can help you do some reconnaissance, that's a great way to do it. So I will often ask, I'll ask my mother-in-law for my father-in-law's sizes, or I will text my mom and be like, hey, what size shoes is dad wearing? Because I'm gonna knit him some socks, and she can let me know things like that. So that's a great way to start, is find out sizing from anyone that lives with them or is close to them, or would have a way to kind of surreptitiously get you information. Another thing you can do, if you have the opportunity to get around their closet with a measuring tape when they don't know about it, you can find a garment they already wear that you know they like the fit of, This is an old knitting trick. So like, let's say you're making your husband a sweater. Get one of his favorite sweaters that you know he likes the way that it fits. He likes the style. It fits him well. He wants his sweaters to be in that cut and style. Lay it out flat on the bed and then take your measurements off of that sweater. So measure how long the sleeves are. How big around are the sleeves? How long is it from the shoulder to the hem? How big is the neckline? Write everything down that you possibly can about that sweater and then knit your new sweater to those measurements as close as possible. And more likely than not, he will like it. One trick you can do here, this isn't like a separate tip, but just add it in. One trick that you can do that I have done several times is if I'm a little bit worried about it, or if it's something very intricate, like a sweater that I don't know how it's gonna fit, I will often leave the ends, so I won't weave in the ends when I finish the sweater. I'll just tuck them to the inside. I'll go ahead and block it and everything else, but I'll tuck all the ends in on the inside, but I won't finish it off. I'll still wrap it up and give it to them, and then when they open it up, I'll say, okay, now there's a lot of little ends on the inside. I will weave those in for you. I just want to make sure it fits, because it's a lot easier to pull things out when the ends are still dangling as opposed to after you've already woven them all in and visibly and all of that stuff. So, and I have had to do that a couple times, only once or twice, but I have had a couple times I gave a gift, it didn't quite fit, and I was able to just pull it out, unravel it a little bit, fix it, and then weave everything in after we made sure it fit. So that's another thing that you can do, but always get your sizes as much as you can. I have another suggestion for you. If you are planning to do a lot of knitting for like your family, say, you can circulate like a little email or a handout ahead of time. Just email them a little questionnaire to everybody on the list and just say, hey everybody, just for future years, just gathering reference. It works best if you do this early in the year, like April or May. They're not going to remember by December that you did this, but send them out a little questionnaire and just say like, hey, I just need to get everybody's general sizes, so when holiday gift giving comes around, if I'm out buying you something or making you something, I know what sizes you need or want. It's actually a really great thing to have on like Google Documents that everyone in the family can see, and then you can get really specific, and I suggest you make it up instead of letting your mom make it up unless she's also a knitter, so you can get as specific as you want, and you can say like, okay, what's your shoe size? Also, can you measure from your toe to the back of your ankle or the back of your heel, and let me know in inches what that is, or centimeters or whatever. And you can ask them for specific sizes. Usually what you'll get from people who aren't crafters themselves is if you just say, what size sweater do you wear? They're going to say small, medium, large, whatever. That's helpful, that's a starting point, but as we all know, smalls can vary dramatically across the board. So I would start with that and say, what size sweater do you wear? Hey, can you measure one of your favorite sweaters that fits the way you like it, and then let me know, and don't make them do every single measurement, but just say like, can you let me know the length of the sleeves? Can you let me know the length from the shoulder seam to the hem? Can you let me know how big around is the bust? How big around is the waist? And that's really all you have to do. So if you consent, that's a lot of extra work, and not everyone is going to be comfortable doing that, but if you have a big group that you're planning to knit for, or you're thinking you might knit more than once, and you can even not mention that you're making things, but just say like, you know, with holiday shopping, I like to make sure I get as close to your size as possible. Most people will understand that and be happy to comply, and then you can keep it on a document and you can refer back to it. Just remember, you may have to update it every couple of years as people's sizes change, because that does happen. Number 7, don't guess. Gift giving is not a good time to try and guess what styles or colors people like to wear. This is the time for you to use your detective skills, or just get over your fear of ruining the surprise and ask people. It's always better to know what people would like than to just take a random guess, give them something, and then have them be like, oh, I really won't wear this, and it's handmade, so I can't take it back. That's the worst feeling ever. And I have been the person who gave a very intricate stranded knit sweater to my husband, and I thought, you know, I'd known him for years and years and years, and I thought I knew what he was going to like, but I didn't ask him to look at the pattern ahead of time. I picked something out of a book I thought was cute and that he would look cute in, and I thought I picked colors he would like, and then I gave it to him, and he didn't like the pattern, and he didn't like the colors in that combination that I had chosen, the shades that I'd picked out. Learned my lesson the hard way, and I have since only knit him sweaters when I have gotten his approval and he at least sees the pattern and picks out the colors and things like that. This is not the time to try and guess. What if you absolutely love mustard yellow and olive green, but your sister hates them? You know, and what if you think that your dad really, really wants a bright red sweater because red is his favorite color? and then he never ever wears it. That stinks, right? But you would be surprised how many times I ask people what their favorite color is, and they're like, purple. But they never wear purple. They only wear like gray and black and white and very subdued colors. There's a difference between the colors we like to wear and the colors that we like to see or to paint our walls or to have in wrapping paper or something else. There's all these different things that make these decisions very, very different. And so it's not enough to just say like, oh, well, I heard him say his favorite color is blue one time. I think it's always best if you can ask people about what they like. That flows really naturally into tip number 8, which is make what they like, not what you want to give them. You may absolutely love a certain particular style of sweater or a certain color, or you may have a hankering to make these elbow-length fingerless gloves with intricate lace. That's something I would love to make. But your giftee may not want that. The person you're giving it to may be like, thanks, I never wear elbow or opera-length gloves. I have nowhere to wear this. I don't want it, and I can't take it back because it's handmade. With handmade, when you can't return things and people don't want to hurt your feelings, it's even more important that you think about what your giftee will want and what they will actually wear. I am notorious for being really attracted to very intricate styles, very fitted vintage things, or really gothic-y things, elbow-length gloves, hoods with all this intricate beading and stuff. I really like dramatic things, and I'm not afraid to wear some kind of silly or dramatic stuff that I knit for myself. However, a lot of the people that I knit for would not appreciate those kinds of things and would prefer more classic, sedate styles, something that just goes with everything. A very plain, common cardigan, some plain vanilla socks, some really simple little mittens. Those tend to be better crowd pleasers in general, and they're easier to wear. So it's really good to think about, I would say, if in doubt, go with the more classic, understated something that is easy to fit into a wardrobe, but really think about your recipient. If your recipient is somebody who would love a dragon hood with like all kinds of glittery scales all over it, then go for it and make them that, because they'll probably appreciate that more than the prim and proper little sedate black button-up cardigan. But if they're not somebody that wears that kind of stuff, don't try to force it on them. This is not the time to try and make them into what you want. It's the time to really prove that the thought is in the gift. So you need to think about them and what they want. One way you can do this is to just observe, what are they wearing? What do they have a lot of in their closet, or what do you normally see them in? What kinds of things do they normally like? You can do a little reconnaissance here too and ask them to describe their style. Like on an everyday basis, what is your style? I've done this a couple of times with friends where I'll say like, how often would you say that you like to get really, really dressed up super fancy and go out and do something like in super fancy dress, as opposed to just, putting on some jeans and a cute little top and some boots? And that can give you a lot of answers right there, because I love dressing up and getting a little bit crazy with my outfit and my wardrobe, but a lot of my friends really prefer to just put on jeans and a t-shirt. And I have times where I prefer that too, but I still have a use for the fancier things, whereas some people I knit for, like, I will literally never wear that fancy sequin bolero you made me. Like, I need something really, really simple. So it's always really good to take into account what they like, not just what you want to make. Tip number 9 is include care instructions. Now, this is something that is a bit more specific for wearable items. If you are doing handmade gifts that are not wearable, like you're not sewing or knitting or crocheting or something like that, maybe you're making candles, or you are creating homemade bath and body products, you still need to include instructions for how to use them. Especially if there's anything that makes your product unique or a little different from the mainstream, you definitely want to include instructions on how to care for it or how to use it appropriately and safely. When it comes to hand knit items, you definitely want to include care instructions. There's a variety of ways you can do this. My personal favorite, although it does cost you a little bit more money, is you can find online, some companies will sell little care tags that you can hand sew into the back of your hand knits that will basically just have the care on them. You can order specific ones for different fiber contents, or you can even design your own and you can get them made at some places. I don't have any links for you, unfortunately, I'm sorry, but I know there are places out there, if you Google it, where you can get customized care labels made up and you can sew them into your hand knits. Another way that you can do it that isn't quite as, that's the best way because it stays on the garment with the garment so they don't have to remember it, but another way you can do it is just to include a handwritten care card in the wrapping. That's usually what I do with mine. I will include washing and care instructions, a little bit about the fiber content just in case they have allergies or something like that. And especially if I used a specialty wool, like if I used a locally raised alpaca yarn for their hat, I will make sure to let them know that because that's super cool. And a lot of people really appreciate knowing that extra little tidbit. So you want to include all of that information so that it's really easy, because the worst thing in the world is to spend a lot of money on fancy yarn, a lot of time on making a beautiful hand knit item for someone, and then you give it to them, they love it and are so excited, they wear it one time, throw it in the washing machine and the dryer, and they ruin the whole thing. That's the worst ever. And while we're on the topic of care instructions, this also goes back into don't guess and observe your person that you're giving to. Think about who you're giving this to and what is realistic for them. I know a lot of people who say that when they knit for men, they absolutely will never give them anything that can't be thrown in the washing machine, and probably also the dryer, but at least the washing machine. I don't think that's across the board for all men. My husband is really pretty good about listening. He didn't used to be, but he's gotten really good about paying attention to care instructions and following them. And I know a lot of guys who are, but I also know a lot of guys who aren't, and they are not going to pay any attention at all, and they're just going to throw it in the washing machine. So maybe think about their lifestyle. If you're giving to a mom of very young children, whether it's her personal item or her kid's item, you probably don't want to give her that super fancy alpaca sweater that she's going to have to hand wash and lay flat to dry and be extra careful with and store in a cedar chest wrapped in tissue and all of these things. You probably don't want to do that. It will be most kind and will be the most easy for her to use and actually get wear out of her sweater if you make her something like superwash merino wool that can go in the washing machine, and many of them can go in the dryer as well. Give her something that she can easily take care of, and she's going to use it a lot more, and she's going to appreciate it. My one thing with that is always, 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 when you're knitting for anybody under the age of 10, you always need to make it machine washable, and probably dryable, but at least machine washable. And if it can't go in the dryer, make sure you are very explicit and clear in your care instructions. And I wouldn't just write it on a tag when they open it. If you're there, I would definitely make sure to say, now I did write these instructions on the tag for you. I just want to reiterate, it can go in the washing machine, but it really, really can't go in the dryer. It will ruin the wool, it'll ruin the shape, whatever. So just pop it in the washing machine on gentle and then lay it flat to dry and you'll be golden. Usually that's enough. People are fine doing that extra little bit to lay it flat. A lot of clothes that you buy at the store are that way these days, but it's good to make sure that they know that ahead of time. And finally, tip number 10 for stress-free gift giving this holiday season is have a backup plan. I cannot stress enough, this might be one of the most important tips I've given you this whole time. No matter how good our intentions, no matter how great and professional our skills, no matter how well ahead of time we have planned, there's always going to be the unexpected, or something gets a wrench thrown into it, something doesn't turn out right, we get a little harried, we procrastinate, there's always something that could go wrong. So I like to plan backup plan gifts when I am making my list and planning ahead of time as much as possible, or as I'm knitting and getting closer to the deadline, I always try to have a backup plan. So it's just better to have that. If you have that backup plan in place, you won't have to stress. And it can literally be something as simple as, if this doesn't work out, I'm getting my sister a gift card for a massage, because I don't want to be stressing at the last minute, and I can just go pick up the gift card. I know she'll appreciate the self-care time, and I can wrap it super fast and hand it over. I can even go the morning of a lot of times, unless it's Christmas Day. But, you know, it's good to have that backup plan in place just so that you aren't stressing at the last minute and you have nothing to hand over. So I hope that helped you and gave you some great tips for stress-free knitting this holiday season, or whatever handmade craft you are doing. Again, if you missed last week's video on why you should make handmade, please go back and watch it. We had a lot of fun, and I gave you a lot of really great reasons of why I think handmade gifts are the best to give at the holiday season or any other time of the year. And I think everybody should consider making at least 1 or 2 gifts a year, because it's really great practice both for you and for the recipient. I hope you guys have a wonderful time, and it is September, y'all, so you need to get knitting. It's almost October, and we need to get started on our gift knitting. I've started on mine. I hope you've started on yours. And if not, I hope that these videos inspire you to get started, because it's still not too late. You can still pick a couple people on your list and get some awesome handmade gifts done in time, maybe even more. But I hope that this will help inspire you. Do not forget to hit that subscribe button below so you do not ever miss a video. And please give this video a thumbs up. leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of these gifting videos. Let me know if you have any other topics you would like me to cover in the future. And please, please don't forget to share this with all of your fiber-loving and crafty friends, because we have a lot of fun over here at the Color Cauldron, and we love to share the love and spread the joy and get new people giving us great ideas for videos and participating and giving feedback in the community. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. It is now time to cast off. Love you.